Hello students, welcome to part 9 of chapter Control and Coordination. Today we are going to discuss in detail about mesencephalon and rhombencephalon. Mesencephalon, it is also called as midbrain. It consists of two important parts, the crura cerebri, also called as the cerebral peduncle, and corpora quadrigemina, also called as optic lobes. This presence of optic lobe, it is a peculiar character present only in case of mammals, mammalian character. So corpora quadrigemina, it is basically made up of two parts, the superior colliculi and the inferior colliculi. You can see in this picture, these rounded two small balls present, these are inferior colliculi. They are also called as posterior colliculi. And the upper part, these rounded upper two rounded parts, these are called as the superior, or they are also called as the anterior colliculi. Function of the superior colliculi, it is these are the centers for visual reflexes or pupillary or light reflexes with reference to the head movement. I'll give you a simple example. When you're watching a tennis match, every time the ball goes from the left player to the right player, the ball moves, and we don't move our head entirely from left to right. We just move our eyeballs with the movement of the tennis ball, or even while watching the shuttlecock move during the badminton matches. So these visual reflexes, the movement of the eyeballs, it is controlled by superior colliculi. Inferior colliculi, it is a center for auditory reflexes, acoustic or sound reflexes with reference to the head movement. Suppose you are listening to a movie or a song on a TV, and suddenly there is sound in another room and you move your head in the direction of the sound. This type of auditory reflexes are controlled by inferior colliculi. So I hope you understood. Corpora quadrigemina, optic lobes, mammalian character, made up of two superior colliculi or anterior colliculi, two inferior or posterior colliculi. Superior colliculi controlling visual reflexes and inferior colliculi controlling the auditory reflexes. Now, crura cerebri or cerebral peduncles, they are also called as the crus cerebri. You can see this picture, cerebral peduncle, these bands. Basically, the midbrain along with the crura cerebri also contains a region which is called as red nucleus. Literally, this has red nucleus. It has ferritin or hemoglobin present, and it is concerning with maintaining the muscle tone of the body or maintaining your posture. Now, what is crura cerebri? These are pair of longitudinal myelinated thick band of nerve fibers. You can see these are longitudinal, okay, myelinated. They are covered with myelin sheath, and the thick band of nerve fibers made up of white matter, and they are present on the anterior side of the brain. They connect the cerebrum. What is their function? What is above them? Above them lies the cerebrum. See, you can see this is the diencephalon, the thalamus part. So above lies the cerebrum and below lies the cerebellum. So they literally connect the cerebrum to the cerebellum. So they are connecting and transmit impulses from the cerebrum to the limb muscles. So crura cerebri, cerebral peduncle, and corpora quadrigemina. Now we will start with rhombencephalon, also called as hindbrain. It is made up of three parts, the pons, the medulla oblongata, and the cerebellum. Now pons and medulla oblongata together, it is also called as the brain stem and cerebellum. First, let us see about the regions. You can see this is the thalamus, that is diencephalon. This is the cerebral peduncle, and this region is the pons. This region is the pons. Below the pons, this will be the medulla oblongata, and then it will be connected to the spinal cord. So pons, basically they are band of longitudinal and transverse nerve fibers. You can see in the picture, they are transverse also and they are longitudinal also. Two types of nerve fibers are there. The transverse nerve fibers, the transverse means the one which are like this, horizontal. They are connecting the different lobes of the cerebellum, and the longitudinal ones, they are connecting to the cerebrum. Now, white matter is outside and gray matter is inside. So, if you see, it is different than the cerebrum and the cerebellum. Opposite. There, white matter was inside and gray matter was outside. Here, in the pons, in the medulla oblongata, and in the spinal cord, white matter is outside and gray matter is inside. It is present exactly in front of the cerebellum. So, here behind cerebellum is present. So, it is present in front of the cerebellum and above the medulla oblongata. This is medulla oblongata. So, above medulla oblongata and in front of the cerebellum. It forms a bulge. You can see in the picture also, it is forming a bulge on the anterior surface of the brainstem. What is the function of the pons? It is connecting the two hemispheres of the cerebellum ventrally, okay, because of the transverse cords. Regulation of heat. It also maintains regulation of heat. It acts as a relay center from medulla to the higher centers. It is acting it is playing very important role. It acts as a breathing center through pneumotaxic center, and it is pons where the motor fibers going from the cerebrum to the cerebellum crosses with each other, and this crossing over, it is called as pontine decussation, or it is an egg-shaped cross. So motor nerves are crossing at the pons, which are going from the cerebrum to the cerebellum, and therefore the right side of the brain controls the activities of the left side and vice versa. So these are the functions of the pons. Now we'll talk about medulla oblongata. It is the posterior most part. It is present below the uh, pons and above the spinal cord, and inside it lies the fourth ventricle, which is also called as the metacele. It is tubular, it is cylindrical. It also has white matter outside, you can see, and gray matter inside, similar to pons and similar to spinal cord. It has roof. On the roof, it has a cluster of blood capillaries. This is very important, students. Listen. So this is, suppose, the pons, and below the pons is the medulla oblongata. On the roof of the medulla oblongata, there is a cluster of blood vessels, and this cluster of blood vessels, it is called as posterior choroid plexus. And what is the function of posterior choroid plexus? It is secreting CSF. I have told you ependymal cells in the ventricle secrete CSF. Anterior choroid plexus present above the diencephalon thalamus secretes CSF, and now posterior choroid plexus also secretes CSF. What is the function of medulla oblongata? Medulla oblongata controls some very important vital functions, like it is a respiratory center, it controls breathing, cardiac center, it controls rate of heartbeat. It has, therefore, these two important centers, and if there is injury to medulla oblongata, person will immediately die because it has two important centers, the cardiac center and the respiratory center. It also has important function, gastric center. It will control the flow of the gastric juices. Some non-vital reflex centers like swallowing center, which controls swallowing, choking center, which controls choking, cardiac center, I told you, respiratory centers, injury to medulla oblongata causes sudden death. Vomiting center, it controls the vomiting. Salivary center, which controls salivation. It acts as a pathway for impulses from brain to spinal cord and vice versa with the help of cranial nerves. Other than this, it has coughing center, then it has sneezing center, then all the involuntary activities like reflex activities like yawning, or we can say hiccuping, these are also controlled by medulla oblongata. So swallowing, choking, vomiting, salivary center, respiratory, cardiac center, and also the coughing, sneezing, yawning, hiccuping, such type of non-vital reflex activities are controlled by medulla oblongata. Now we'll talk about the second most important part of the brain, which is cerebellum, and it is the second largest part of the brain, occupying almost 11% of the brain. So such a large part after cerebrum. It is located just below the posterior part of the cerebrum. Cerebral cortex is made up of gray matter and has many folds. So it is similar to cerebrum. Cerebellum and cerebrum, in regards to gray and white matter, it is similar. The cortex, the outer part is gray matter and inner part is white matter, and this white matter, it is spreading. You can see it is spreading inside the gray matter, and special tree like branching is there. This special arrangement of the white matter branches into the gray matter, it is called as arbor vitae. So I told you just this only, keep the white matter together, it exhibits a tree-like pattern called as arbor vitae. The cerebellum, it is partially divided into three lobes or three parts, two lateral ones and one central one. The single central cleft, it is called as the vermis. So on the two sides, these are the lateral, and in the center there is this vermis. Okay, the two lateral lobes, they are called as lateral hemispheres. And always remember, students, cerebellum is a solid structure. It does not has any ventricles inside it. It is not having any cavity inside it. What is the function of the cerebellum? It is related with all skillful movements, voluntary movements. It is helping in maintaining body posture, body equilibrium. It controls the skeletal muscles, especially when you are dancing, walking, running. all your striated muscles or skeletal muscles, they are controlled by cerebellum. It controls rhythmic movements like walking, running, swimming, dancing, and it is not possible without cerebellum. And therefore, if you might have seen a drunkard, a person who has drunk a lot of alcohol, so his cerebellum is affected, and therefore he cannot walk properly, he cannot talk properly. So all his skeletal muscles are not balanced that time. Cerebellum receives sensory inputs from eyes, muscle joints, and semicircular canals of the internal ear, statoreceptors. Based on this sensory information, cerebellum then sends the motor impulses to the skeletal muscles to alter or to change the body posture and maintain like body equilibrium if needed. So sensory information is coming from eyes, from muscle joints, from the semicircular canal to the ear. This reaches to the cerebellum, and then cerebellum will send information or motor impulses to the skeletal muscles to adjust, to balance, or to maintain a posture of the body. So very, very important function is carried out by the cerebellum. So students, I hope you have understood both the midbrain, mesencephalon, and hindbrain, rhombencephalon. In next video, we will discuss about spinal cord. Thank you.